When the truth hits harder than any bullet, how do you keep living? That question had haunted Ethan Walker for 3 long years, ever since the day he lost the woman he loved more than his own life. Ethan had once been a rising officer in the NYPD Narcotics Division, a devoted husband, and a father who always tried to hide the tremor in his hands after long night shifts so his little girl wouldn't worry. But everything shattered on a rainy afternoon when a speeding truck slammed into his wife's car. The official report called it an unavoidable traffic accident. Ethan never truly believed it, but he also never had the strength to face the possibility that it might have been something more. 3 years later, he was still standing only because of his daughter, Mia, now 4 years old, the one bright, innocent force anchoring him to the world. Ethan worked relentlessly, filling every empty space in his mind to avoid sinking into the grief Lily left behind. But darkness had a way of finding cracks, and he had no idea that a secret, even darker one capable of destroying everything, was about to find him first. It happened on an ordinary night shift at NYPD headquarters. Ethan was heading down the hallway when he overheard a hushed conversation behind a half-closed door. The voices belonged to 3 men he considered brothers: Sergeant Cole Harris, Detective Ryan Moore, and Officer Blake Turner. They had fought side by side with him through raids, stings, and long nights filled with danger. But the tone of their voices now was different, cold, tense, calculated. "Delgado wants the next shipment clean," Moore muttered. "5 million in product, 3 checkpoints, no mistakes." Ethan froze. Luis Delgado, the name alone, could tighten the air in any room. One of the most brutal drug lords in the country. A man the NYPD had been trying to nail for years. If these 3 were working with him, the consequences were unthinkable. Ethan felt his instincts take over. He stepped back into the shadowed corner of the hallway, slowly pulled out his phone, and hit record without making a sound. The men had no idea their every word was being captured, evidence strong enough to destroy careers, reputations, and lives. His heart pounded like it was trying to escape his chest, not just because of the betrayal, though that cut deep, but because he knew exactly what it meant. Anyone tied to Delgado's operations didn't leave loose ends. They eliminated them. The recording continued. Whispers about routes, payoffs, coded signals, and threats for anyone in the department who might get curious. By the time Ethan stopped the recording, his hands were shaking. The truth had just dropped into his lap like a ticking bomb, and he knew his life would never be the same again. What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that this single moment would force him and his daughter into 4 years of hiding and reveal a truth about his wife's death far more horrifying than he ever imagined. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard their voices again: Harris's low, confident murmur, Moore's sharp whisper, Turner's nervous pacing. These were men he'd trusted with his life, men he'd shared meals with, swapped stories with, celebrated victories with. And now he knew they were working hand in hand with Luis Delgado, the most ruthless drug lord on the eastern seaboard. The weight of what he had recorded felt heavier than any weapon he had ever carried. By dawn, Ethan made a decision. If he hesitated even a single day, someone else might get hurt, or worse, the 3 of them might realize he overheard something. He had to bring the evidence to someone who could actually do something about it. The most logical, least dangerous choice was the man he'd always admired: Deputy Commissioner Howard Grant. Grant had a reputation for being sharp, incorruptible, and fiercely protective of the badge. If anyone could expose a network of dirty officers, it was him. Ethan rehearsed exactly what he would say on the drive to headquarters. He would be straightforward, factual, calm. He would hand over the recording, explain how he got it, and ask for immediate protection for himself and his daughter. The nightmare would end with the right man in charge. But the universe had very different plans. When Ethan pushed open the heavy glass door of NYPD command offices, a weird stillness greeted him. It wasn't unusual for early mornings, but something in the air felt tighter, heavier. He walked through the corridor leading to Grant's office, heart drumming steadily. As he lifted his hand to knock, voices seeped through the door, low, urgent, and horribly familiar. He recognized them instantly. Harris, Moore, Turner. His stomach dropped. He leaned closer, barely daring to breathe. "Shipment leaves in 48 hours, Moore was saying. 5 tons. If this one goes smooth, Delgado clears all our debts." Grant's voice answered next, calm, controlled, utterly confident. "We'll make it smooth. I have a new agreement with Delgado. As long as I keep the DEA off his back, he keeps money flowing through channels I can control." Ethan felt the world tilt beneath him. Grant wasn't a savior. Grant was the mastermind. He wasn't the man Ethan had hoped to trust. He was the one who ensured Delgado stayed untouchable. The same man Ethan was about to turn to for help was the darkest piece of the entire puzzle. Ethan pressed his back against the wall, forcing air into his lungs. The betrayal hit deeper than anything Harris or Moore had done. Grant was supposed to be the clean line, the last stop, the last hope. Inside, Harris lowered his voice. "You sure no one caught on yesterday?" Moore snorted. "Come on. Who'd be stupid enough to spy on us? Everyone here knows better." Grant chuckled. "We've removed officers for far less. Anyone who gets in our way disappears. Accident, suicide, wrong place, wrong time. It's not hard." Ethan's hands went cold. Those words were too familiar, too practiced, too easy. Something twisted painfully inside his chest as a horrifying thought flashed through him. Was Lily's death really just a traffic accident? Or had she seen something she wasn't supposed to see? He shut his eyes tight. The thought alone felt poisonous. He needed to leave, right now. He turned to slip down the hallway, quiet, invisible, but the universe slapped him again. Just as he stepped away, the office door creaked open. Detective Ryan Moore stepped out. Their eyes met. For a full second, neither of them moved. Then Moore's face changed shock to suspicion to cold recognition. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. Ethan didn't answer. His body made the decision before his brain did. He ran. Moore shouted behind him. "Harris! Blake! He heard us! Ethan heard everything!" Footsteps thundered down the hall. Ethan sprinted past desks, past startled officers, past doors that suddenly felt too far away. His heart slammed against his ribs. He knew he wouldn't reach the exit before they caught up. He needed cover. A gunshot blasted through the corridor. The bullet hit the wall, inches from his head, exploding plaster onto his jacket. Ethan dove behind a column. Moore yelled, "Stop him! Shoot if you have to!" People screamed. Officers ducked. Chaos erupted. Ethan crawled through a side door into a stairwell, bolted down the steps, and burst onto the street. His car was a block away. He sprinted toward it, lungs burning, not daring to look back. Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, not from police responding to any call, but from the emergency alarm he'd triggered by running through a restricted stairwell. Now the building would lock down. Grant would know. Delgado would know. He reached his car, fumbled with the keys, jumped in, and sped off without checking his mirrors. He didn't need to. He already knew he was being watched. He didn't go home. He didn't go back to the station. Instead, he drove straight to Mia's preschool. His daughter was the only thing he could think about, her tiny backpack. The way she hugged him every morning, her soft voice calling him daddy. He entered the classroom breathless. The teacher looked startled. "Is everything all right?" "No," he said honestly. "I'm taking Mia home." He lifted his daughter into his arms, holding her so tight, she squeaked. She giggled, not understanding the terror racing through her father's veins. That moment solidified the truth for Ethan. He was no longer a police officer. He was a target. And Mia was his weakness. He drove them out of the city, his mind racing. If Grant was corrupt, then the entire upper chain could be compromised. Going to internal affairs was suicide. Going to the FBI was risky. Grant had federal contacts. Staying in New York was unthinkable. There was only one option left: disappear, erase himself, erase everything, leave behind the life he knew. By the time the sun dipped below the skyline, Ethan Walker, the officer, the husband, the friend, the protector, had vanished from New York City. Only a desperate father with a terrified daughter remained. And Ethan knew with absolute certainty that the men he once trusted would spend the next years hunting him. They had already tried once. They would not fail the second time. The highway stretched endlessly before them as Ethan drove through the fading light, gripping the steering wheel with both hands like it was the only thing keeping him alive. Mia had fallen asleep in the back seat, clutching her stuffed rabbit to her chest, unaware of the world collapsing around her. Ethan glanced at her through the rearview mirror, feeling a crushing wave of guilt. She deserved a childhood filled with playgrounds, bedtime stories, warm dinners, not car chases, threats, and fathers running from the shadows of their past. Night swallowed the horizon as they crossed from New York into Pennsylvania. Ethan didn't stop, couldn't stop. Every time a car approached from behind, his pulse kicked up, and he gripped the steering wheel tighter. He imagined Harris behind the wheel, Moore leaning out the window with a gun, Turner laughing as they cornered him. He imagined Grant making one phone call after another, setting off quiet alarms in every police department across the region. Ethan Walker would be labeled as anything they needed him to be: a fugitive, a dirty cop, a threat. Once the narrative was twisted, people would believe whatever they were told. By the time dawn approached, exhaustion clawed at his eyes, but adrenaline kept him awake. He finally pulled off the interstate and into a rest stop, surrounded by dense trees. He parked far from the other vehicles, shut off the engine, and sat in the silence, trying to catch his breath. Mia stirred, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, where are we?" Ethan swallowed hard. "We're taking a trip, sweetheart." "Without Mommy?" The words hit him like a punch. "Yeah," he whispered. "Without Mommy." She pressed her forehead against the window, watching the sky lighten. "Can we go home later?" Ethan looked away, so she wouldn't see the pain in his eyes. "Not for a while." He stepped out of the car, checked the surroundings, and pulled out his phone. It had been buzzing for hours. Missed calls, messages, alerts. He powered it off, removed the battery, and tossed both pieces into a trash bin. Then he did the same for his work phone. He knew better than to use anything traceable. With Mia bundled in his arms, he returned to the car, placed her gently in the back seat, and drove toward the nearest small town. He needed supplies, cash, food, clothing, but he also needed to disappear, truly disappear. 2 hours later, he parked behind a grocery store and used the last of his savings to buy essentials. He paid in cash and kept his head down. He avoided cameras. He avoided people. He moved like a ghost. Then he found a deserted parking lot behind a row of abandoned buildings and stopped again. Mia sat in the back seat, swinging her legs, humming a soft tune. Ethan leaned against the car and let out a long, shaking breath. His mind was racing with possibilities, but none of them seemed safe enough. Then he saw it. An old, tattered jacket hanging out of a dumpster, a worn beanie, a pair of gloves with holes in the fingers. Something in his mind clicked. He didn't need to outrun the men hunting him. He needed to make them stop looking. Criminals didn't chase ghosts. Police didn't hunt the invisible. He needed to become someone no one would look at twice. Someone who lived on the fringes, unseen and unimportant. A homeless man. The idea felt insane, but the longer he thought about it, the more it made sense. He and Mia could disappear into the cracks of America, where no badge, no drug lord, no corrupt officer would bother to look. He dressed himself in the tattered clothes, rubbed dirt on his face, and let his posture sag. His reflection in the car window no longer resembled Officer Ethan Walker. He looked like someone worn down by years of hardship, tired, beaten, hollow. When Mia saw him, she gasped. "Daddy, you look funny." He forced a smile. "We're playing a game, a hiding game, and you and I have to be the very best at it. Can you do that?" She nodded eagerly. "Like hide and seek?" "Exactly." He hid the car deep in the woods, where no one would find it for months. Then he took Mia's hand and began walking toward the bus station. He bought 2 tickets to a small, forgotten town far away, Riverton, Arkansas, a place so small it barely appeared on maps. The kind of town where secrets didn't travel far. The bus ride took almost 2 days. Mia slept most of the way, curled against him. Ethan stayed awake, watching every passenger, every stop, every passing highway sign. His nerves were wound so tight he felt like he might snap. Riverton was exactly what he needed. Old houses, dusty roads, abandoned factories, and a downtown that seemed stuck in a decade no one remembered. Nobody looked twice at a tired man with a child wrapped in a blanket. There were others like him, wanderers, drifters, people the world had forgotten. For the first time in 2 days, Ethan felt invisible. And invisibility, he realized, was safety. He rented a tiny, run-down room above a closed pawn shop with what little cash he had left. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. Over the next few weeks, Ethan learned where homeless families slept, where food banks offered meals, where abandoned buildings provided warmth during cold nights. He made friends with the forgotten men and women who had stories of their own, stories filled with pain, addiction, war, loss. They didn't ask questions. They didn't pry. They took him as one of their own. And slowly, Ethan built a new life. A life without a badge. A life without a name. A life where he could protect Mia by being nobody. 4 years passed in this uneasy stillness. 4 years of hiding in plain sight. 4 years of praying the men who hunted him would give up. 4 years of watching Mia grow up in a world made of cracked sidewalks and shelter blankets. The fear never left him, but neither did his resolve. Because deep inside him, like a silent fire burning, the truth waited. And so did justice. All he needed was for Howard Grant's power to end. And then, after 4 long years, the day finally came. 4 years changed everything, and yet nothing at all. Riverton, with its rust-flecked fences and cracked sidewalks, had become a strange kind of sanctuary. The people who drifted through its streets, the veterans with distant eyes, the single moms juggling too much, the men who spoke only in murmurs, had accepted Ethan and Mia as part of their invisible tribe. Mia grew from a small, fragile child into an 8-year-old with fierce resilience. She learned to read using donated books, made friends with stray cats behind the old laundromat, and found joy in tiny things: a warm muffin from the shelter, a new pair of hand-me-down shoes, a rainbow chalked on the concrete. Ethan watched her grow with equal parts pride and guilt. Every birthday candle he lit in secret felt like a broken promise. Every time she asked why they couldn't go home, his heart twisted. But he didn't break. He couldn't afford to. He was waiting for the world outside Riverton to shift, waiting for Howard Grant's reign of corruption to finally end. And then, one gray morning in early fall, it did. News spread quietly through radios in pawn shops and murmurs in grocery aisles. Deputy Commissioner Howard Grant had officially completed his term and stepped down. A new deputy commissioner had been sworn in: Samuel Brooks, a name Ethan remembered from years ago. A man rumored to be clean, steady, disciplined. That morning, something changed in the air around Ethan. For the first time in years, he didn't wake up afraid. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a life beyond survival. But that fragile hope shattered the moment he saw the uniform. It was a Sunday afternoon. Ethan was sitting on the curb outside a small market. Mia perched beside him, eating a cup of ice cream donated by a kind cashier. The breeze was gentle. Cars hummed past. Nothing felt unusual until a shadow fell over them. A pair of polished black boots stepped into view. Ethan's heartbeat stuttered. His throat tightened. No one in Riverton wore boots like that. He raised his eyes slowly, and his blood turned to ice. Standing in front of him was a police officer. Tall, clean uniform, badge gleaming, expression unreadable. Every instinct in Ethan's body screamed, "Run." His fingers tightened around Mia's arm before he could stop himself. She looked up at him, confused. "Daddy?" she whispered. The officer studied Ethan's face with unsettling intensity, like he was searching for someone he wasn't sure he'd found. Ethan's mind raced. Had Grant's men tracked him here? Had they finally found the ghost who escaped 4 years ago? Had everything he sacrificed been for nothing? The officer took a small step forward. "Ethan Walker?" The name landed like a blow. Ethan swallowed hard. His muscles tensed. 1,000 escape routes flashed through his mind. "I don't know that name," Ethan rasped. forcing his voice to sound older, rougher. "You've got the wrong man." The officer didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Slowly, he opened it and held it toward Ethan. A photo stared back. A photo of Ethan Walker, taken 5 years earlier, in uniform. Ethan's world closed in. Mia looked from the photo to her father, realization dawning slowly in her eyes. The officer's voice softened. "Sir, I'm not here to arrest you." Ethan didn't believe him. "Not yet." "Then, why are you here?" "My name is Deputy Commissioner Samuel Brooks." His tone was calm, controlled. "I took office 6 months ago. One of the first things I did was reopen several unsolved internal investigations." He paused, including the disappearance of Officer Ethan Walker. Ethan's breath caught. Brooks continued, choosing his words carefully. "I found documentation from years back indicating that you may have stumbled on a serious corruption ring within the NYPD. But the files were incomplete. Some were missing. Others were tampered with. That raised suspicion. I kept digging." Ethan kept Mia close, shielding her instinctively. And the deeper I looked, the clearer it became that someone didn't want you found. They labeled you unstable, suggested you fled because of mental issues. It didn't add up." Brooks lowered his voice. "So I checked Grant's personal archives." Ethan felt every hair on the back of his neck rise. "What did you find?" Brooks locked eyes with him. "Enough to know you were telling the truth." For the first time in years, Ethan felt the faintest flicker of trust. Small, fragile, but real. He loosened his grip on Mia. Brooks took a cautious step back, ensuring he didn't appear threatening. "I don't want to hurt you," Brooks said, "and I would never harm your daughter. I'm here because I need your help, and because I think you deserve justice." Ethan's voice trembled. "Justice died a long time ago." Brooks shook his head. "Not if you give me what you have, the recording, the evidence. Whatever you risked your life to save, I need it." Ethan studied him, searching for any sign of deceit. But Brooks's face held only sincerity and something else. A quiet anger. The kind of anger only honest men had when confronted with deep corruption. Slowly, Ethan stood. Mia clutched his hand. "Daddy? Is he a bad guy?" Ethan looked at Brooks. For the first time in years, he didn't see an enemy in a uniform. "No," Ethan said quietly. "I don't think he is." They walked together toward the abandoned storage shed where Ethan kept a small box of belongings. Photos, old papers, a few memories of Lily, and one cracked phone containing the original recording from 4 years ago. His hands shook as he held it out to Brooks. "This is everything," Ethan whispered. "What I heard, what I saw, what made them hunt me." Brooks took it gently. "Then this is where it ends." Ethan exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding for years. A breath filled with fear, exhaustion, and the faintest hint of hope. As Brooks examined the device, he said, "Once I start this investigation, there's no going back. Grant has allies. Harris, Moore, Turner, they're still out there, and they won't go quietly." Ethan nodded. "I'm done running." Brooks glanced at Mia, then back at Ethan. "Then it's time to finish what they started." For the first time since the night he fled New York, Ethan felt something inside him shift. Not fear, not pain, but purpose. The storm that had chased him for 4 years was finally turning, and Ethan Walker was done hiding. The investigation began quietly, almost invisibly, just as Brooks had promised. But underneath that silence was a storm gathering strength. Brooks returned to New York with the cracked phone containing the recording, carrying it like a live grenade. He didn't hand it to a tech specialist or an analyst. He kept it with him, knowing that one wrong move, one misplaced file, one whisper to the wrong person could get Ethan and Mia killed. Within 48 hours, Brooks assembled a small task force of agents he trusted completely, people who had no connection to Grant, Harris, Moore, or Turner. People whose careers were built on integrity, not favors. Working out of a secret office in Brooklyn, they began digging into years of financial records, surveillance footage, intercepted calls, and internal logs. Every new finding added another layer to a conspiracy more tangled than Brooks ever imagined. Meanwhile, in Riverton, Ethan lived in a constant state of suspended breath. Each passing hour felt like waiting for a verdict. He kept Mia close, walking her to the small local school, picking her up the moment the bell rang. Every time an unfamiliar car rolled through the neighborhood, his heart jolted. Every siren in the distance made his palms sweat. 3 weeks passed. Then finally Brooks returned. He arrived late at night, avoiding the main streets, parking his car behind the old laundromat. Ethan was waiting for him behind the dumpsters, where shadows swallowed everything except their breath. Brooks stepped out of the car, his expression grim. "It's worse than we thought," he said. Ethan felt the ground sway beneath him. "Tell me." Brooks pulled out a thick file and handed it to him. Inside were photos, documents, transcripts. Ethan's eyes scanned the pages, drug ledgers, money transfers, coded messages from Harrison Moore, shipping logs from Delgado's cartel. But then he flipped to the last section and froze. His wife's name, Lily Walker. Ethan's breath caught. His heart cracked open. Brooks lowered his voice, heavy with sympathy. "I'm sorry." Ethan forced himself to read, line by line, page by page, each word sliced deeper. Lily Walker had not died in an accident. 3 days before her death, she had been seen near a storage facility where Delgado's men operated. A witness had initially reported a woman matching her description, arguing with someone. That witness statement had been lost. Traffic camera footage had been corrupted. Maintenance logs from the truck that hit her had been altered. Grant had signed off on Lily's case personally. Ethan felt the pages slip from his fingers. "She wasn't supposed to die that night," Brooks said softly. She was silenced, because she saw something she wasn't meant to see. Ethan sank onto a crate, head in his hands. The years of grief, guilt, and exhaustion came crashing down in a tidal wave so overwhelming he couldn't breathe. The woman he loved, the mother of his child, had been murdered, and he had spent 4 years thinking he was running from danger, never realizing he had been running from the truth too. Brooks knelt beside him. "This evidence, it's enough. We're ready." Ethan lifted his head, eyes red but burning with new fire. "What happens now?" "We move," Brooks answered. "Tonight." The raid that followed was the kind of operation people whispered about for decades. In less than 6 hours, coordinated teams hit 5 locations across New York: an underground warehouse, 2 safe houses used by Delgado's crew, Grant's private storage unit, and finally, the luxury apartment where Grant himself had been hiding since stepping down, thinking he was untouchable. He wasn't. Harris went down first, arrested during a failed attempt to flee the city. Moore resisted, pulling a gun before being tackled to the ground. Turner ran, but they caught him before sunrise. Delgado was captured trying to escape through a private airfield, and Howard Grant, the man who destroyed lives without blinking, was escorted out in handcuffs, fury burning in his eyes as cameras flashed from every angle. It was over. The news exploded across the nation. Corruption at the highest levels of NYPD. A massive drug ring involving officers sworn to protect the city. A cover-up of a young mother's murder. Ethan watched the reports from Riverton, Mia asleep beside him on the worn couch. Tears blurred his vision. But for the first time in years, they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of release. 3 days later, Brooks returned, not in secret this time, but proudly, walking up the dusty road toward the shelter where Ethan waited. "You're coming home," Brooks said. I don't know if I can," Ethan whispered. "Yes, you can," Brooks insisted. "New York owes you everything. The department owes you everything." Ethan hesitated only a moment before nodding. Returning to the city felt surreal. Where fear once gripped him, now people greeted him with respect, reverence, even gratitude. Brooks personally reinstated his badge, placing it in Ethan's trembling hand. "You didn't lose this," Brooks said. "It was stolen from you." Weeks later, Ethan was promoted to lieutenant, charged with rebuilding a shattered unit, this time with officers he could trust. He moved into a small home with Mia, trying to rebuild the life they were denied. The nights were still difficult, the memories still painful, Lily's absence still a wound that would never fully heal. But the fear was gone. The running was over. And for the first time since that terrible night 4 years ago, Ethan Walker finally felt like he could breathe again.